Good morning, everyone. We'll give it about a minute for most of our audience to join, and we'll start at about 9:31. So bear with us. We'll be starting very shortly. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first Morgan Hunt webinar of 2025. Today, we will start to delve into the world of AI and automation in recruitment. We'll explore how these tools are making hiring easier and more efficient, as well as some of the potential pitfalls and challenges. We'll look at how AI is reshaping recruitment and the potential ethical challenges as well, and really how to keep that human touch as part of a more tech-focused process. So lots to talk about. My name is Claire Canary. I'm a director at Morgan Hunt, and I also lead on diversity within our business. For those of you who are not familiar with us, Morgan Hunt is an award-winning national recruitment business with over 150 consultants, and we have offices in London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Glasgow. We've been established for over 30 years, and we provide specialist recruitment services across organisations in the public and private sector. So I am delighted this morning to be joined by two women who are real experts in their field for this discussion. Hopefully they'll turn their cameras on and you'll start to see them. Welcome, first of all, to Holly Langley. Holly is the founder of Restack, and she has extensive recruitment operational management experience, and she focuses on maximising return on investment and optimizing recruitment technology tools. Holly now supports businesses to navigate automations and helps them to optimize their recruitment processes for success. And we're also joined this morning by Lisa Jones. Lisa is the MD of Barclay Jones, and they provide recruitment training to help make recruiters more successful. Lisa has a wealth of experience working with ambitious recruitment teams. She works with their people, their processes, training on tech and data, as well as automation strategies. So really looking forward to our conversation this morning. Before we kick off, just a quick note on our format. Our discussion will run till about 10:30 today, and I'll aim to leave about 10-15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Please, as you have a question, just post your question in the chat on YouTube at any point of our conversation. We will see them all, and time allowing, we'll try and answer as many of your questions as possible. And now to kick off our conversation, just as I suppose, a more general intro, Lisa, if I could start with you, and then Holly, maybe you could answer this from your perspective as well. But as an introduction to the kind of current environment and the key trends that you're both seeing on a day-to-day basis, Lisa, what are the primary ways that you're seeing AI and automation currently being utilised in the recruitment process?
I'm certainly seeing that the initial stage that a lot of agencies are going through is weaponizing automation to reach as many people as they possibly can with mass mailing and marketing and things like that. But I think as well, what I would say is it's not necessarily being engaged with in the most effective way in terms of really driving the recruitment process and strengthening it. We know, and I've seen certain stats, for example, that the average permanent candidate expects to apply for a job and get placed within a couple of weeks, which anyone in the hiring zone would know that's potentially quite a big ask. But if the candidates are thinking that and they're expecting that, but the process doesn't deliver that, then there is an argument to say that automation could maybe just squeeze some of the time wastage out of the process. So I definitely think it's being used for volume. I definitely think it's being used for parsing CVs, sifting, getting data in front of recruiters. But I'm not necessarily so sure right now that it's being used in the most effective way to really strengthen and drive the process, as well as it could be anyway. But I'm hopeful that we're going to get there this year.
Yes, and I mean that kind of speaks to the candidate experience as well, doesn't it? So potentially candidates or the talent aren't necessarily seeing some of the potential benefits. And Holly, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on that as well?
I'm gradually seeing it used more and more to improve efficiency across the hiring ecosystem, as it were. So as Lisa mentioned, like candidates have expectations that they're gonna be placed quickly, but also that they're going to be communicated with quickly. So what we're seeing is more and more people kind of coming through and saying that we've got 10,000 applicants a month or 5,000 a week or whatever that may look like. And there's no way they can communicate and have a call with every single one, because we'd be here for years if we were trying to do that, and we would still never do it because more people would apply. So more and more people are starting to use this to kind of screen candidates to make sure that they are actually speaking to people who are really good. But also, and probably arguing more importantly, improving the candidate experience by making sure that every candidate is communicated with. They're getting emails, they're getting correspondence to say thank you for applying. Here's more jobs that might be relevant, or saying, you know what, we're really sorry you weren't successful this time, but here's how we can help you going forward. So that real like recruiter efficiency piece, specifically surrounding candidate engagement, is where I see it coming more and more and is being more and more used. Even just in the last sort of 6 weeks, I've been inundated with inquiries about getting that exact thing done.
Right, interesting. And as you know, we've run some polls and surveys to our potential audience today, as well as on LinkedIn, to just get a feel around this topic in terms of people's understanding and how confident they were with AI and automation. And given that a lot of our audience it's recruiters, but it's also HR professionals and maybe business leaders. So only 6% came back and said they were extremely familiar with AI and automation. So that left about 47% responding to say they felt kind of unfamiliar in various different ways. So there is a lot of noise, but there's a lot of people out there thinking, oh, wow, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed by this. There's a lot coming my way. I could buy this tool, buy that tool, but what's really going to work here? So if I could maybe start with you, Lisa, if you were going to give an individual one tip to help them gain that confidence, or even a little bit more understanding in terms of key trends and how they can really optimize AI and automation, what might that be at the moment?
I'm going to split it into two if I'm allowed.
You are.
The ultimate tip, and me and Holly did this a couple of weeks ago, was ironically to ask an AI tool where in the recruitment process AI can offer the most value. I'm not suggesting by any stretch, and we'll talk a lot in this session today about how trustworthy AI is right now, but by God, it's a good start. So I challenge anyone, not right now, you're listening to us, but outside of this session, to go on to ChatGPT and actually ask the question, how will AI and automation help me improve my recruitment process? And see what it tells you. That's something to think about. But I would absolutely say, and in all my years of tech, and I'm sure Holly will agree as well, tech is only as good as what you need it to be. And often people buy stuff without necessarily understanding what they need it for. They buy it because, oh, I've got to, or I've got to defend myself in some way through change. And it's really around looking at your recruitment process and looking at where it might be inefficient and looking at where it might be dropping out. Looking at where it might be so manual. Again, going back to what Holly and I have just agreed on, that candidates' expectations are right up here, but their experience is often way down here. And it's maybe looking at where the tech can really drive those two figures together to improve process. So ask AI how it's going to help you. And then look at your own, have a good look in the mirror at your own processes and the expectations of the people that you're trying to bring in, and figure out not just where AI can help, but when it can help within your process.
Yeah, so maybe identifying some of the areas you feel you're potentially weakest on, and seeking its support in that. That makes complete sense. And what are your thoughts on that, Holly?
Yeah, I would echo what Lisa said. Like I was going to say, you need to understand the bottlenecks in your system. You need to understand where your recruitment teams are at. So if you're in a scenario and you're thinking everything's great, we're not sure what we can improve, go and sit down and say to the different people within your business, whether it's finance or the people doing the candidate compliance or just the candidate screening, and say, how can I help you? Talk me through this process. And I do this exact same thing on a daily basis. And I sit down with somebody and I say, so talk me through this. And I did this thing yesterday with somebody who was responsible for background checks for the candidates. And kind of once we drilled into it, it turned out they were kind of getting half the information. They had to then go back and get this. Then it came back. Then they went back again. And a couple of weeks later, the process was done. But it did not need to be that long. But I would never have known that. I don't think the business were aware of it, but going and asking those questions about what the current process is will help dramatically. And on the flip side of that, speak to your existing suppliers. So whether that is the people who manage your CRM, whether that is where you advertise your jobs, whether that's your HR system, go and understand from your existing suppliers what they are doing in AI. Because if you've got AI that's embedded into what you're already doing, that's going to be a lot easier for you to implement within your business. So speak to those suppliers, understand what they're doing with AI at the moment. There might be stuff that you can access for free that might benefit you. Just for example, if you're on Microsoft, you may well be able to access the Microsoft Copilot product that's out. So you don't necessarily need to buy a whole new set of stuff. Let's see what you've already got, and your suppliers and your account managers at those places will really, really want to help you, because it helps with the uptake of their product and means that all of their stuff is in one place as well. So go speak to your suppliers.
Yeah, so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe start with what you're already doing. And I think that point about really understanding your processes and sitting with people and watching and talking is a good one. Another piece that came up in our poll, in fact, one of the top themes that people from the polling were really interested in, and it's an obvious one, is how AI and automation will possibly increase efficiency. And we've touched on that already. And that's potentially narrowing those gaps between maybe the candidate expectation and what a recruitment team is delivering. So, Lisa, to go to you, how, in your opinion, has AI and automation already improved efficiency in terms of sourcing, screening, and that whole hiring process?
I think, it's looking at that circle of life, that life cycle of recruitment, whether it be sourcing and helping recruiters find the right candidates and as quickly as possible. And then evidently it's also around, the challenge that any hiring team will always have is that the data pools potentially that they're sourcing from are incredibly dirty, or at best aspirational. So the way I put myself online is what I aspire to be, as opposed to the reality check of what I can actually do. By the way, I am a very truthful person, but we do know that most of us won't go onto LinkedIn and really say it how it is. Most of us will say it how we would like it to be. And we're not necessarily inadvertently lying. It's just that the reality of that you put your best foot forward. So I think, AI and automation tools absolutely is starting to be used to help us source more effectively, potentially really helping us tap more into the passive market, which we know is a big market. I think the screening piece for me, I'm nervous about, just because, and I know there's a question coming up later around bias, but certainly from a screening perspective, at least allowing recruiters to sift as quickly as possible. I do think as well, just the overall, as I said earlier, it's around the whole life cycle, and really driving some turbo into the bits that maybe either were created lag, or, as Holly said, weren't even being done. You know, God forbid we are shocked at a candidate who gets upset that they might make 80 applications and only hear back on 3 or 4 of them. I do think that we've got an opportunity with this technology to, yeah, I always say to my clients, if you had a 24-hour day and an unlimited budget, how amazing would your candidate and client experience be? But now you don't have all of that money and that time. What is it you're not doing that actually could be really affecting your ability to hire and manage? So I think it's really around weaponizing the process with this stuff as well. For me, it's again removing those bottlenecks and removing those excuses. That's where I'm seeing automation and AI now. It's that reality check on what the recruitment process could be if you let it, and manners and communication.
Yeah. Getting back to people, agree. So from your perspective in terms of efficiency, Holly, how have you seen AI change the way organizations source candidates? And Lisa touched on this. I'm interested in that elusive passive candidate pool, because that's the one that most organizations, most recruiters are really keen to reach, but it can be really hard to reach. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've seen a couple of things recently that I think are kind of game changers in the way we manage this. So firstly, normally what happens is a candidate enters the system, either they've applied for something or they get added by a recruiter. And 6 months, 6 years, 20 years, hopefully not, they're still there and they've not been spoken to. Now, the reality of this is, if your recruiter stumbles across that CV, I'm sorry to say, they're probably going to look at it and go, well, this is 5 years old. I'm just not gonna speak to them. I'm not gonna engage with them, because they're probably not in that role anymore, because it's not up to date. We need to get out of that habit, and we need to create things that are up to date. So the way I see AI going forward really is by automatically engaging with those candidates out, and from an automated point of view, that's going to say to the candidate, and look, we've got you on our system. Sorry we haven't spoken to you for the last 6 months, but we'd love to send you more live jobs. This works particularly well if you're doing contract stuff. So are you able to update your CV? You can then get the candidates updating their CV straight onto your database, which then means that you no longer have to worry about 8 outdated CVs. Then you can also then use AI to make sure that their current job title, potentially like their current company, is also up to date. So you no longer have a pool of candidates that are out of date information. So when that searching comes through, it's much improved. On the flip side of that, we can also use AI to match candidates against the specific roles. So when we're adding jobs, if we know that we need a project manager who works in the charity sector, if we can be making sure that the candidates are coded up properly, then AI can be matching them and saying, look, oh, hang on, there's 100 project managers here who have got at least 3 years experience in charity, then they could be the right fit for the job. Oh, and by the way, they also all live in London. So rather than having to get the team screening and going through hundreds of CVs, the AI can be automatically matching, and you can take it a step further. You can even email those candidates and say, look, we've got loads of project manager jobs in charity available right now. Are you interested? Oh, by the way, if you haven't updated your CV, here it is. So we kind of just removing that searching and the out of date information. I read a figure the other day, and I can't remember who told it to me. The average recruiter spends 14 hours per week just searching.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of searching being done for stuff that is out of date or not accurate. So the more stuff that we can get accurate, up to date, and reduce that kind of manual sifting, as Lisa said a minute ago, will really, really help everybody be more efficient, and will again greatly improve your candidate experience as well, because they're being interacted about roles that are relevant to them.
Yeah, makes it more targeted, and then deals with that messy, dirty data that Lisa referenced. Yeah, that makes sense. And this pursuit of efficiency, it's kind of like a key feature we're seeing at the moment in terms of organizations. We're all looking for it. And particularly in the current climate, nobody has lots of cash to throw about. So, Lisa, how can businesses, though, that's great, we want to do that, but how can organizations and businesses avoid dehumanizing the whole process of searching for potential talent if they're really going too far on that efficiency drive? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think certainly from what I've seen and tagging on, if Holly and I are allowed to play tag on this call, is that 13 to 14 hours of sourcing has come about because of the volume of data that recruiters and hiring staff have access to. Volumes of pants data, to be technically correct on that. So the recruitment process has become incredibly busy and inefficient at search stage. So we know, and we know why we're on the call today, that AI and automation needs to remove a lot of that busyness and that inefficiency. But like you've said, it can potentially go too far the other way, where we are sourcing very quickly. What I want to see, though, is we source. I always say to my clients, if we could take that 13 or 14 hours down to even 6, how much more time could you then spend rehumanizing the recruitment life cycle? So I'm always very interested in taking that time that we would have wasted on the inefficient bits and then rehumanizing where possible. What I don't see enough of in recruitment, and where I want to reinvest that time that AI and automation could save by helping me pinpoint the right data, is I want to see more time invested in understanding the personas and the psyches of the people that we're trying to attract and hire, so that when we do then send our outreach and our mailer campaigns and things like that, we are using the right language, the empathy, that stuff online that we know attracts people. That's what I want to see. And that's what I think is going to rehumanize the process, is that there's going to be more time understanding the needs of the candidate and the language that they speak and their life chances and their goals and their aspirations, in order that we can keep them focused. That for me is what I want to see happening. I'm not seeing enough of that right now, but I do think that if we can start making the process more efficient and then reinvesting the time that we get back to then really get under the skin of our candidates, I think that would be a really positive step forward.
Have a more authentic relationship with them and understand
Absolutely.
them.
And a more one that candidates really value, as opposed to seeing it as a necessary step. There's a very big difference, I think. And certainly I know recruiters who've been in the market a long time who really get off on the rare moment when they bump into a candidate and the candidate goes, you wouldn't believe the change that you made to my life. And I think we, in the recruitment industry as a whole, what I definitely see is not enough respect for itself. Because it's drowning and it's surviving. And that's one of the things that, as a tiger mum, I want to see them looking at tech and going, okay, how can I turn from a survivor to a thriver? And what does thriving actually mean? And how can I use the technology to show them that I'm human and that I'm here to make a difference to their lives, as opposed to get them a job? There is a big difference, but most of the time when you get someone a job, if that's the right language to use, you are helping them fulfill something within their dream. But I think because of the way that tech and data has crushed and squeezed and suffocated the recruitment life cycle, I think that we've got an opportunity with tech now to go, no, hold on a minute. Let's stop struggling with this stuff and let's look at really weaponizing it and improving our processes. I'm going a bit too passionate now. I'm going to
No, thank you, Lisa. And Holly, if we go back to something we touched on earlier, I mean, I think certainly from any side, if you're going out into the market and thinking about buying a new CRM or how any platform, it can feel really overwhelming. And there's so many options. And then signing up or going with the wrong option is very, very costly for any organization, whether they're an internal recruitment HR team or a recruitment business. It doesn't really matter. So what's your kind of key tip for how organizations can can measure return on investment of AI and automation in their recruitment processes? Where would you even start with that?
So I think for me, it's very where a lot of this is very new and will be new to businesses. We can't sit here and go, right, we want to make £100,000 off AI this year, because it's not as simple as that. It has got to be broken down into almost every single AI step. So let's just take what we were just briefly discussing about improving the candidate experience. So it may well be something along the lines of, right, you're going to send out a short candidate survey to this week that says, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you recommend us? Kind of get a bit of net promoter scoring. And if that's coming back, let's say 50, 60%, we've now got the tangible ROI is that we want to get that to 80, 90, 100%. And automation can then embed that and support that. So you need to break it down. Alternatively, there might be metrics such as time to hire. Obviously, we want that to be as short as possible. And on the flip side, we want time to fill to be as high as it can. So track where you are now, and there are bigger things that you can track over time, those figures. There might be more just general, much smaller things that you can track. So actually, how long do we think our team is searching for on average? So we're going to implement this AI, this singular piece of AI product or this AI process, and we want that to be 10 hours a week by the end of Q3 this year, for example. So it's breaking it down into every single thing. I personally don't believe we can look at it as a whole yet. It needs to be broken down into the different processes, and just every time you bring something into your business or a new AI process, go back to, why are we doing this? How are we going to measure it? And put in steps to measure it. So if you are bringing something in, a new process, then make sure you're measuring the success of it month 1, month 3, month 6, month 12. So you can really see the results that we need to be, because none of this is going to be any use if it's not actually getting stuff out the back of it, if it's not making us more efficient or helping speed up your time to hire and your success. So really break it down, really work that out, and I would focus on the key metrics. So yes, I was saying, how much money has it supported you if you're an agency, the time to hire, the time to fill, candidate experience, the time saved from your recruiters. They're kind of the 5 things that I would look at, and just do it on a regular basis and really, really break it down.
Yeah, and those apply to organizations with internal recruitment teams within their HR or whatever, because they've got exactly the same challenges, potentially lots of vacancies with a too long a time to hire. Okay, and moving on to diversity and inclusion, that improving D&I, the diversity of the potential talent pool coming in was a popular topic also in our poll, when we pushed that out to the potential audience. Now, the great hope was that automation removes all human input, therefore it'll remove all bias, or that's a potentially simplistic way to look at it. So it could remove all those thousands of biases that we all hold, and every individual holds. So it can appear to be a really ideal way of doing that. However, how confident, Lisa, if I could come to you, and Holly, I'll probably get your thoughts on this. How confident can we be that AI will not just perpetuate pre-existing biases within recruitment processes? Because there have been some fairly high profile examples where that exact thing has happened.
I like being confident about stuff, but I'm not confident about this. Yeah. I'm not confident about it because we need to remember that all AI is, and Holly, you are very welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, is a collection of whatever currently exists, fed back. And bias exists. We know this. And recent political events have told us that bias will continue to exist and probably will actually get worse. Don't want to get political, but there's a lack of fact checking, and there's a lot of very powerful voices speaking some quite interesting, what they consider to be truths, and they feel that fact checking is biased. So we are stuck in a very sticky place right now with trusting what technology tells us. And we've been bred to believe that what technology tells us is the truth. Even going back to when we were all at school well, I was in school in 1874 and I had my little calculator, I would type stuff in and it would tell me the truth. Of course, technology's moved forward now and it's not telling me the truth, it's telling me a form of the truth. And maybe I am not educated enough to actually quiz that and say, right, okay, is this correct? So I am worried about that. But at the same time, and I've got to look for the positives, is I think and I hope that what AI and automation will also allow to happen is that members of our society that potentially wouldn't have got through a traditional recruitment process, who may be judged for either whether it's a traditional lack of education or just that they are highly intelligent but just can't flip and spell. And I look at that very important strata within society and think, right, AI and automation could actually level out the playing field for those people. It could allow them to lean into a job that they might not normally get access to or even be interviewed for, because our traditional running through CVs at speed, judging people by how they respond to an email, which might have traditionally discounted certain echelons of society. Now, all of a sudden, that those people, if they engage with this technology in the most appropriate manner, and if the hiring managers see through and understand that it's okay to use that technology to give those people a leg up, then I'm quite excited about that. I've worked with plenty of people in recruitment who don't have a traditional degree level education, but are incredibly talented. But because in a typical recruitment agency, you don't always need a degree to enter the organization, they've been allowed to flourish. But since the last 5-6 years, we've had to communicate more online than ever before. Potentially those types of personalities are being held back again because they're being judged on their outreach and their ability to stick an apostrophe in the right place, as a very basic example. So as much as I'm worried about bias being something, or people trusting AI tools and automation to feed them the right people, I am worried about that. I'm actually very excited about what these tools could potentially do to certain levels of society, up or down, whatever you want to call it, whatever language, just to help them get through and get a really good job and also keep that job as well beyond that initial interview stage. So there's pros and cons, I think, at the moment for me.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on that, Holly?
I think the truth is it's so new. Like, to be honest with you, it's only, I would say, in the last 6 to 8 months where people are now in the recruitment industry are talking about AI and ED&I and inclusion and all of that within the hiring process. For me, kind of the last 3 years, we've been so excited about AI and automation, we've kind of forgotten the other parts of that. So now we're kind of having to backtrack. My biggest concern is that I think the bias will most likely continue to be there, mainly because the quality or the content of CVs is really going to be what we're driving the AI on, because it's only going to be as good as the data. Now, I see CVs on my client systems on a daily basis, and I still see CVs now with no email address, no phone number, no address, very badly formatted, or just not quite the right content. So it really means that we're going to really struggle to locate and match candidates to those jobs, let alone communicate with them, because that basic data and that basic information, what the AI is going to be driving their decisions off, sadly isn't there. So I think part of the whole AI and automation transition that's going to happen over the coming years is also going to be educating candidates and supporting them, which we can do in the roles that we have. And recruitment agencies are going to have to do this even more, to kind of say to candidates, look, this is what we need on your CV. Here are CV tips. This is why we need your information on there. Please detail your skills at the top. Please detail your past experience in this order. Make sure you have your name, your phone number, address, so that we can then make decisions and we can use the technology to support you further. So I think it's going to be a challenging time. And I think until kind of we've mapped out and embedded this even further and the data quality is improved, I think it's going to be really hard to kind of support those sort of the DE&I initiatives and removing that bias until we've got the basic elements of this right,
Yeah.
which is frustrating to say because I'd like to see it moved on further, and in time that will come. I just think it'll be a while to get there yet.
Yeah. And it's also, sorry, go on, Lisa.
Or alternatively, we just bin the CV.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
radical. But everything you've just listed, Holly, skills, da 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 da. Why do we need a CV anymore? You know, that there's, you know, maybe we've got the chance, we could start a revolution today, Holly. Death to the CV and profiles and things like that. You know, I still go into some recruitment businesses who still have application forms and CVs. I'm like, what are you trying to do here? What information do you need that's so important? And it's sometimes about looking and saying, actually, could you revolutionize your own process by saying, we don't need your CV. We actually just need maybe, God forbid, a video profile.
And focus on real skills-based hiring rather than
absolutely. You know, let's look at the process. What I see too much in the industry is a lot of tech being thrown at it, but the process not really being amended or adapted to suit where we are right now. You know, we still hear that video is a tough gig for a lot of recruiters, but actually for a lot of candidates, it might be perfect. Or we hear that certainly when I go into some recruitment businesses, there is a real challenge to adapt and become adept at using all of the different channels, this omni-channel approach that we've got. But if we are to actually move our businesses forward and become present within the recruitment process rather than just a victim of it potentially because of all the data and tech we've got access to, we do need to have the time and the energy to actually spend time on this stuff. And sometimes we have to be quite radical in our approach rather than just let the tech wash all over us and hope to God we're still around at the end of it.
Hope for the best, exactly. And it's all impossible to have a data set that isn't unbiased because it will be, you know, learned from what's been fed in. So you've got to be proactive, you've got to be checking, you've got to be tracking what's the output. I'm going to go, there's a question in the chat that I think might be worth discussing now as we're on the topic, but how efficient is it to ask AI to address its own internalized and learned bias? Would either of you like to kind of tackle that? So I guess you're asking how efficient it is to ask AI to address its own internalized and learned bias. So I suppose that might go back to the data sets that's being fed to whatever tool you're using. You know, I think it's pretty obvious that there won't be a data set that hasn't got some bias in it because it's been learned from previous data, maybe about, I don't know, these types of candidates were most successful within our organization for these roles. And the only thing I could say to that is auditing, looking at your data, maybe trying as much as you can to be as diverse, get more diverse data than perhaps outside of your organization, you know, and constantly maybe being transparent with your potential talent, your candidates coming through. But I don't know whether Holly or Lisa, you have a comment on that.
I think the only thing that I would add in is, give it a go, trying to help understand how the AI is making these decisions or changes for you. I would also recommend trying to teach it what you want. So if within your business you've got an ED&I training process, you want to not look at CVs, you want to look at skills, you don't want to look at qualifications, you want to look at work experience, really focusing on outcomes, actionable insights, for example, tell that to the AI. So then you got the opportunity to create a version of a recruiter in an ideal format that's got no bias, and then you can use that to teach the AI and improve it that way. So don't forget that we can teach it stuff as well. And I would highly recommend sort of mapping out what would an ideal process look like that has no bias in it, and see if the AI is up for the challenge. And again, speak to your suppliers. Sorry to say it again. If you've got something that is not working, or you believe there is bias in that process from a product, say that to the supplier. They're entitled, so you're entitled to make sure that the bias and stuff isn't in that and isn't in the process and all the tech. So push back on the supplies to get it where it needs to be as well.
Yeah, great shout. And going maybe more towards the positive, because AI potentially can be more positive, but how can organizations reach more potentially diverse talent pools beyond, say, traditional job boards? Have you seen, Holly, where that's worked, where organizations are getting to more diverse talent beyond maybe just reaching out to the normal job boards?
Yeah, so I think there's a real power of community in what we're doing, and through a lot of the recruitment agencies who I know who are getting ahead are creating amazing communities. For example, I'm going to use you as an example, the team at Morgan Hunt doing webinars and events like this. You've created a community which is really adding value to your network, which is brilliant. One of my clients has does work and they place people within call centers across Europe. And they've discovered that, believe it or not, a Facebook group is the way forward. I've not been on Facebook for 10 years, didn't know it was still a thing. But for them, in their environment, creating a Facebook group that is basically kind of now like an unofficial job board, let's say, has been really powerful for them to help them understand that. I've seen more and more people trying to sort of advertise roles or create really great employer branding on the likes of TikTok, again, Facebook, Instagram, which obviously is free to access for all. And they're asking people to DM, comment, reply, apply here, or just kind of be available for a chat so that they don't have to go through the same process of creating a CV, uploading it to whatever job board that we have or have not got available, which I think is really powerful as well. And what I'm saying to more and more customers as well is like educate clients, use and candidates, use newsletters, use email campaigns, text messages, video, whatever that may be, on whatever platform you can to really support and educate your candidates further with the market, the industry. So you kind of become the employer or the recruiter of choice, but actually all you've done is add immense value to the community that you have built. And there's many different ideas you can do as well. Another one, in WhatsApp groups. You've got WhatsApp groups, or you can do a WhatsApp broadcast, so you can send updates to people. So potentially, if you've got their information, why not send them messages to kind of educate them further, update them with live jobs straight on WhatsApp, rather than them having to go somewhere that's maybe slightly less accessible.
Great, thank you. Lisa, have you any thoughts on that in terms of how AI sourcing tools are helping recruiters identify potentially high potential candidates from underrepresented groups?
I think again it's like Holly was saying, this community piece is really important, because as much as there is a crazy amount of data out there now, and we know how valuable that data is. I mean, one recommendation I've got for anyone that's interested in this topic is to watch Asif Kapadia's latest movie called 2073. It's a tough watch, but it talks a lot about AI, and it's a sort of docu-film. And I took my kids to see it, and it blew their minds and actually got them thinking about how they're using online tools to communicate with their friends and what that might turn into. I think that if we start looking at the data sets we've got, and like Holly very eloquently said, really managing them like communities, and going back to what I said before about understanding the personas of those communities and what gets them out of bed in the morning, and leaning into that, and controlling might be the wrong word, but commanding it, and cajoling it, and keeping it relevant and safe, I think is going to be really important. And that obviously means that having the time to do that is important. And then once you've got the time to do that, really then understanding the essence of the DE&I strata that runs through the communities that you are attracting. Some industries will have more of a need to engage with that than other industries. And also going back to what I said before about, if traditionally your approach was you've got to have a certain educational level to get in, well, immediately you're creating your own bias within your own organization. And it's asking yourself, actually, what skills and wills do people need to actually thrive in your organization, and making sure the tools that you are using are really tapping in. But there's something that I just very quickly want to share with you. I've just asked AI how it should sort itself out to remain unbiased. And of all the things I've ever done with AI, that answer took the longest to come back in terms of other questions that might have asked it about its favorite color or what the best movie is right now. But basically says AI is efficient at flagging bias, but not fixing it. It's a scalpel, not a surgeon. Powerful when used correctly, but dangerous when left unchecked. The most ethical and effective recruitment strategies use AI for insights and efficiency, but humans must remain accountable for fairness and inclusion. And then it's very helpfully put a rocket at the end of its sentence. But I thought that was quite almost funny.
Yeah.
That I've asked, and it actually and it begins. I won't read the whole thing out. It basically said, asking this question is like asking me to look in the mirror. That's what ChatGPT literally said to me while you guys were speaking. So I think organizations need to look at their own inherent bias before they rely on an AI tool that knows nothing about them or their community to fix their bias issues.
Yeah.
That helps at all.
No, it does. I mean, it isn't a magic bullet. And I think with any system, you would say that. So why would we assume this would be? And in fact, it could be fraught with issues. So you've got to be continuously challenging and auditing, rather than expecting this solves everything, because it certainly won't do that. And that kind of brings on, again, one of the themes that came up in our polling if we move on a little bit from the D&I, but it kind of is still within that ballpark. And one of the things that came up that people were interested in was the potential ethical considerations when using AI. So Holly, how would you advise HR professionals navigating potential ethical dilemmas associated with AI-driven decisions in recruitment?
I think there's a couple of things within this. I think we need to hold each other accountable. And I think you almost need a bit of a SWAT team, an ethical AI ethics group that meets once a month to kind of review what's going on and report on the diversity within the hiring that you've made to see, are there still any biases that are happening? And if so, how can they be improved? Because obviously it's probably not going to happen overnight. So I think some sort of group within the team to monitor this is going to be crucial. I think I said, again, I'm going to say it again, holding the suppliers accountable to understand and get the product or the AI wherever it needs to be. And that might be that you actually need to do internal training on the AI to teach you what you need. And I think lastly, it's going to come down to training and support. Like, this is going to become more and more important over the next 12 to 36 months, I can imagine. And it's going to become part of the everyday topics and language that we're using. So if you can get ahead now and be getting your team trained and supported on how to remove bias, how to manage their products, their searching, their matching ethically and responsibly, that is going to get them ahead. Now, I have a funny feeling that at some point in the future, we are going to have, by law, those who are using AI are going to have to go through ethics, licensing, ethical recruitment practices, ethical AI usage. I don't even know what that's going to be yet. Watch this space. And if you can get ahead of that now and really understand what your team are doing and educate them, you're going to be ahead of that curve. Plus, it also means that if you are working with clients, you can say to them, look, we are using AI, and just to let you know, we're also doing all of this to remove bias, and that's going to get you ahead. That's going to support your end clients or get you ahead of your competition. And also it will probably really help you empower candidates as well, because candidates understand that. So really just training, continual improvement, reporting, and just monitor it, because the changes aren't going to happen overnight, I'm afraid.
Agree. Thanks, Holly. I'm going to move on a little bit because we're looking at the time, and implementation and how to implement, and some practical tips came up again in our when we did some polling. So in terms of those practical implementation tips, what are your tips in terms of rollout and implementation? Holly, if I can go to you, and maybe Lisa, you've got some thoughts on this as well.
I think for mine, it's training, understanding what's happening, understanding what should be happening, and training, training, training. The
Mm.
reason why Lisa and I do what we do is that we kind of are doing training and supporting of agencies. And the more people can do this in-house and do training, training, training on all of this is going to get them and improve where they need to be. Whether that's training for operations team on how to clean up the data, training for the recruiters on how to search and match, everything is going to come down to how the AI is used, how it's trained, and therefore how it's implemented. So do not underestimate the importance of training throughout anything, whether it's AI or not AI. Training is going to be absolutely crucial. So don't underestimate the importance of that.
Yeah. And Lisa, from your perspective, what common challenges do you see? I mean, I know you're probably seeing more recruitment teams, but I'm thinking we've got a lot of people on the call who are HR professionals as well. But the challenges they face when integrating AI and automation into their existing processes, what are your tips in terms of how they can overcome those challenges?
I think one of the challenges that they're going to have is that it's being implemented whether they like it or not,
Yeah.
because tools are available to anyone that just with any device and all of their devices. And that's one of the benefits, the democratization of software that is available, but it creates massive risk as well. I think that again, that commanding and controlling is important. I think these HR teams really need to get under the skin of how their staff, ideal or future, use technology and get ahead. Training is, as Holly very eloquently said, is really, really important. I actually would suspect that Holly and I do quite a bit of counselling as well when we're speaking to our clients about how technology is affecting them and what they need to do. But I have seen a trend in recent years for recruiters and HR teams to engage with tech at their own personal level rather than at process level. And that for me is where the risk probably is going to be more dangerous for us, because even if we think as organizations we've got control of unconscious bias and all of that lovely stuff, if we don't actually know what the tools that our teams are actually engaging with, we've got a big problem there. So I think for me, it's grabbing hold of the process and absolutely making sure that we know where and when tech needs to add the most value, and maintaining control of that with communications and training. And the term that I always use is WIFM, what's in it for me, making sure that we understand how this technology can help our candidates as well as our staff, and really keeping control of that message as well.
Great. Kind of leads on from that, Holly. You know, at Morgan Hunt, we certainly know that our expert recruiters can add real value to a recruitment process. But what aspects of recruitment do you believe still need to be managed by humans, by individuals, and why that human oversight is so important within your automated processes?
So when we look at job hunting, this is one of the most important decisions you're ever going to make. Should you take that job? Should you take that contract? This could have a life-changing impact on you. So I think automation is great at collecting information and sending stuff out, but we need to have conversations at key points. So a pre-screen, let's understand really why is the candidate trying to move. Interview preparation, yeah, we can, of course, send out a lovely 10-page document about everything we need and interview advice and preparation. But actually, before they go for that interview, the candidate's going to be nervous, right? We just want to have a call and say, are you all right? Everything, any last minute worries? No, great. So having that human relationship is going to be crucial with kind of things like that. And also like throughout managing the offer, throughout once they've started, like, yeah, you can send a message saying how are they getting on, and that's really good to do. But we also just want to have that one-to-one. However, how is everything going? Actually, how the onboarding wasn't great. Okay, let's feed back to our client or the HR department about how we can improve that going forward. So I think the real key high value moments where that could make or break the candidate's experience is what we need to be doing. That doesn't mean to say AI can't support us. AI can tell us what questions to ask. It can tell us to make those calls or remind us. But the actual conversation at those areas is got to be got to be done by a human because it's too important to be done by AI, in my opinion.
Right, thanks, Holly. I'm just going to go to one of our questions actually from our audience. And this is someone saying, I'm curious, we've talked a lot about AI and automation, the positives and the pitfalls, but on a personal note for both of you, I'll start with you, Lisa. What things do you see in the recruitment and selection process that really annoys you?
I think that it's the using AI and automation to simply turn up the volume on an existing crappy process.
Yeah.
I think that it's, well, I've not got enough time. So what I'll do is I'll engage with tech to create more time. But what I'm not going to do is use that time more wisely. I'm just going to do more of what I'm already doing. As opposed to standing back from the coalface and going, right, what could I do with this? When could I do with this? Why should I do with this? And I think that for me is that what I certainly see in recruitment, and I've said this for many years, is that often in the recruitment world, technology is used almost like a defense mechanism. I've got a problem, I'll fix it with tech, as opposed to how can I make my process more effective? What can I do to jump the shark with what's going on right now and actually become, as Holly said, a more desirable recruiter and organization to work with because I've actually engaged with this technology. I actually think there's a lot to be said, and Holly mentioned it earlier, about being honest about the technology that you've got in your business and how you're going to use it. So I regularly recommend to my clients from an automation perspective to create an automation personality and introduce that automation personality to your community and say, we're really busy trying to help you find a job. And there's going to be points at which Leia or Solo or whatever Star Wars character is going to be in touch with you. And that's our automation. It's because we care. We're doing this to keep you focused and to make sure you get everything that you need when you get it, when you need it. So I think there's a lack of honesty sometimes about technology and how it's being used. But I just, what annoys me is probably a lack of creativity as well. And I forgive the industry because there's a lot that's been going on in the last few years to allow us to maybe not be as creative and as thought-provoking as needs be. But as a client literally said to me this week, we've got to stop blaming COVID for how we are now operating as a business. It's 5 years ago. Sorry.
Yeah.
We've now got the time. 2025 is about thriving. It's about actually taking stock, looking at ourselves, as AI just said to me on my other laptop, looking in the mirror and saying, right, what can I do with this stuff? So I have big hopes this year that hiring professionals will look at their processes and go, do you know what? I'm going to do something really cool with this, as opposed to just use it to do more of what I'm already doing.
Exactly. Yes, agree. Thanks, Lisa. What's your thought on that one, Holly? What things do you see in the recruitment and selection process that really annoys you?
To be honest, it's just there's too much noise. So what happens is we're asking candidates questions, we are asking them for CVs, we're asking them for 100 different compliance documents, and three different people have asked them for it. It's not a good candidate experience. On top of someone's applied for a job, they live 10 minutes down the road, so but they're not quite right, so we just ignore them. So the whole actual candidate experience of good communication, asking them one time for the compliance documents and then feeding back if they haven't done it, just improving what we're doing and making it seamless. Like if you were Amazon, if we look at the likes of Amazon, they're not gonna call us up and say, can I just confirm 100% you do definitely live at this place? Oh, can you send us proof of ID that you do actually live before we send you these bin bags that cost £1.99? That's not going to happen. And I'm not saying we're like Amazon, and I don't necessarily want to compare ourselves to that, but you know what I mean? Like we need to be giving a better experience, and that's where agencies and companies who are really kind of improving the candidate experience are going to be the ones that get ahead, because when the market changes and there are a large number of roles and hiring is increased, they're going to have that candidate pool, that community already there. So let's reduce the noise, let's reduce the overwhelm, and really improve every element of communication throughout the candidate life cycle so we can be their go-to employer or agency of choice.
Yeah, and I mean, we're working with organizations every day who have long application processes and require application forms. Now, they will still need to do that, but it's looking at how they can streamline that. And as you say, not constantly going back and asking for extra bits of information all the time, because that just as you wouldn't happen in another walk of life.
And
So
I think the
why
other
would it
thing
happen
is
in
is
recruitment?
asking, what do we actually need? It's very easy to say we need their address, their date of birth, their inside leg measurement, their next of kin. I saw on an application form the other day, and I thought, do you actually need that? So I'm
Yeah.
kind of going back to people more and more, and I'm saying, what do you actually need and why? If you need it, collect it, get it, and make sure you get it for every single candidate. If you don't need it, maybe you don't need to ask for it, because if we are asking too much and want too much from these candidates in the application process, it's going to increase the hiring time and it's going to potentially weed people out.
Yeah.
And it's also going to
Thank you.
create quite a bit of bias in the process as well, because from a DE&I perspective, you might be discounting people who are maybe
Absolutely.
not able to engage at that level through a lack of time or organization.
Yeah, completely. Well, look, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. So thanks everyone who joined us this morning. I hope you all found it as illuminating and interesting as I did. A massive thank you to my fabulous expert guests, Lisa and Holly. I really appreciate both your expertise and your time today. I think we've clearly just touched the surface on this. It's a big topic, it's fast evolving. So it's definitely one that we're going to revisit later in the year. So please keep an eye on future Morgan Hunt events. Just a note on this, we'll circulate the recording of today's session, as well as contact details for both Holly and Lisa if you wish to reach out. But thank you everyone for joining, and have a great rest of the day.